Oh, let me pin this comment first. What's up, y'all? What's up? What's up? What's up? Let's see. What's good? Today we're gonna talk about some astrology and a way to apply it into your day to day. Let's see. Let's see if we like this one. In the comment. All right. Let's see. All right. Well, so let's get into this a little bit here. So we have daily phases for astrology. Now, with this, what we're talking about here. Let's see. Well, again, peace, family, peace. Okay. So, daily phases for astrology. Now, first thing we have to talk about is this. In your day, you have 24 hours, right? We have 24 hours in our normal daily cycles here, right? When you understand astrology, right, there's 12 signs in astrology, right? So this is how we're going to break this down. Every single sign has 2 hours in the day when it expresses itself. And we're going to go through the body and we're going to talk about how these times express themselves. And you can see one of the smaller phases, right, that go on when we talk about relativity-wise, right? So from 6 to 8 a.m., right, you have Aries, the sign of Aries. What's Aries, right? Let's try to understand Aries first so we can understand the signs. 1 second. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Alright, well, alright, so let's talk about Aries first. Alright, Aries is the sign of the head, right? Aries is the head. So if we're talking about the body here, boom, Aries is the head. Boom, right? So, what happens between the hours of 6 and 8 usually? Usually for most people, I know for myself, right? So when I speak on this, I'm going to speak a lot from my perspective here. From the hours to 6 to 8 in the morning, I know that I always end up waking up at some point in those times. No matter how early or late I go to sleep the night before, I feel like I always wake up between the hours of 6 and 8, right? Because this is when you have the cardinal sun, right? The sun between these hours is the sparking sun, right? That's why it comes into Aries, right? It's at the head. That's when you're usually going to wake up. So you're going to start to project your reality, right? When we understand what the sun does. Right, so 6 to 8 a.m. fall under the category or the caricature of Aries, right? That's number one. Then we go from 8 to 10. This is Taurus, right? Now, what usually happens between the hours of 8 to 10 a.m.? Usually in those hours, right, you're getting your day started, right? You might be eating breakfast. You might be setting up your day. You might be just kind of like grounding into what it is. Because this is when you're getting up, right? There's a lot of movement at these times, right? 6 to 8, I'm getting up, I'm getting active, right? But then 8 to 10 is when you're more usually set into it, right? So if I woke up, this is when I'm eating breakfast, right? This is when you're having your tea, your coffee, all those different things. Right, at that 8 to 10. This is because Taurus is the mouth, right? So this is when I'm eating things of this nature, right? Or I'm traveling, right? You're setting your ways, I'm traveling to where I'm going, right? This all can be seen through Taurus, right? Now, you go to the hours of 10 to 12 a.m. Now this, Gemini, right? The hours of 10 to 12 belong to Gemini. Well, when you think about your day-to-day, this is one of the peak times where you're in communication with people and you're relating to other people, right? This hour of 10 to 12. So just naturally within your day, right, you find yourself falling into this rating here. And especially with your jobs, right? If you think about a lot of the jobs that people work, between hours of 10 to 12 is when you're like answering emails from the day before. You're answering a lot of stuff from the day before in this time period here and getting yourself caught up for your day as it's going to take place like in the second half, right? I know like in my day, this is a time where I end up having a lot of conversation with people. I'm always trying to like figure out the logistics of my day at this time, things of this nature. This time is a time where you're most awake, right? You're most able to relate, right? Because that's what Gemini wants to do. Gemini wants to relate. So if you're in between these times of day are the best times to try and use that energy to relate to other people, right? Now, from 12 to 2 p.m., we're in the sign of Cancer. Now, this is a very funny one, right? This is now from 12 to 2, we fall into the sign of Cancer, right? What is Cancer about? Cancer is about home, right? It's about nurture, right? Security, all those things. Isn't it funny that lunch falls in Cancer? Comfort, meals, right? Here, a very moony position, right? But we also look at siestas in other cultures and things like this. Culturally, we always grasp this anyway, right? So this is the time where you feel where you can do the most nurturing, those types of things. You're gonna eat. You're gonna want to eat more. You're gonna want to nurture yourself. All these things come at this time period here. Because if you think about it as a parent, this time you're gonna be cooking lunch for someone. You'll be providing lunch. You'll be doing these things, right? So Cancer ruling here, right? Now we got from 2 to 4 p.m., right? 2 to 4 p.m., what comes after Cancer? We got Leo, right? So again, you ate, right? You ate your food, you got your rest. Now you go back into the day with all this new sustenance, right? You're at your highest self, right? Now you're dealing with the day from 2 to 4 is usually when you're in, as a human, you're your max, like, productive hours, right? Because these are the times when the sun is the strongest, to be honest, from 12 to 2. Well, 12 to 4, that's when you get your best sun, like, in that area right there, right? So with that, that's my most active time when I look at where the sun is at and where I'm doing. So now I'm using that energy and jumping back into reality, right? And now I'm projecting the Leo nature here, right? Now what comes after Leo? Virgo, right? 4 to 6 p.m. Virgo. Now, let's take this from like someone who works a 9 to 5, right? If you're working a 9 to 5, quote unquote, right? Around 4 to 6 is when you're closing up shop for the day, right? You're putting your things in order, you're getting yourself ready to move, right? Most people anyway, in your 4 to 6 time period, right? You're usually closing up your main activity for the day, right? And you're getting into more of your like sensuals, right? Whether it's getting ready to think about eating, think about going home, think about getting to your home, right? Because after 6 is usually when you get closer to your base. Now, some people, you have work and things like this that disrupt these natural cycles, but these are the more natural cycles, right? From 4 to 6, usually start to hit that little like wall, right? So at that time, right, 4 to 6, this is when you jump into Virgo. Virgo wants to be very analytical. It wants to make plans. It wants to analyze the day. It wants to think about those things. And that's what usually happens between 4 to 6, right? Now, from 6 to 8 p.m., you jump into Libra, right? Now, at 6 to 8, you're in Libra, right? What's Libra about? Libra is the scales, right? Libra is the scales, right? Find it balance, right? Balance and harmony, right? So when we're talking now about coming into that 6 to 8, what are you usually doing? You're usually having dinner with someone, usually coming home to your loved ones, maybe you're seeing your kids, all these different things, or you're getting ready to start turning your day down, right? So what are you doing in that time? You're trying to create harmony within your environment, right? You might be cleaning your room, you might be cleaning the house up after you just ate, right? You might all those different things that might have went on, right? But in this time period, right, is when you're starting to create that harmony, find that balance with your environment, get yourself ready and comfortable, right? Because Libra is all about the feeling of things. It likes a nice environment, right? It's because you went from having Virgo to Libra. So these two signs are really at that end of the day, locking you into that closing out the day, getting everything ready for tomorrow, getting yourself prepped so you can have a restful night, right? Creating that space for you, right? Now we go from 8 to 10. 8 to 10 p.m., right? Now we find ourselves in Scorpio, right? Think about this time. Ow, wow, 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 right? When do most bars open, right? When do most of the time you want to go out? When do you, if you're at home, right? When do you kind of get into like intimate like spaces with your significant other? When do you get into those things, right? Very Scorpio things. Intimacy, very, very much about depth, right? Depth. So between that 8 and 10 time, right, is when you're going to find those depths within your day, right? Most of the time, that's when you're coming home to things, when you're getting back to your quarters, right? You're getting to really dive into your space, right? I just set my space, right? I analyze how I'm going to do it. I set my space up. Now I'm in my space. I'm diving into my space, whatever that is for the night, right? Whether it's you're watching a movie at this time, right? Think about the things that you usually do between 8 and 10. Usually jump in, dive into your shows, dive into books, things of this, right? Now from 10, go over here, from 10 to 12, we jump into Sag, right? Sag. Now, what's the Sag energy, right? Now, just like Scorpio, right? This is also a very sexual or passionate, we'll say, and passionately intense area, right? The thrill seekers of the zodiac, right? In some sense, right? But if we think about it here, I just took in all this information, bang. 10 to 12 is the time to understand how to apply it, right? Sag is shooting. If you ever think about it, whenever you're up past 10 o'clock really, like, and you're up late, your thoughts and your mind, like your mind is constantly racing. You're thinking about bigger things, right? People will be like, I stayed up late thinking about the universe, right? Why is that? Because between 10 to 12, Sag is hopping in there, right? And what's Sag doing? Shooting the arrow, right? It's trying to land and find these different things. It's trying to reach and expand on different things that I've experienced throughout the day, right? That's why when you sleep in your like normal rhythm, like you get to bed at 10, you sleep 10 to 2, you end up having dreams that are doing these things for you because you're coming into this even when you're sleeping, right? So your dream is hitting Sag. That's why you'll have like, when you sleep at different times in different places and different things like that, you'll realize you're bringing out certain types of dreams, certain visions in your dreams because you're tapping into different energies at different times when you do things, right? Now, we have 12 to 2, boom, and 2 to 4, right? Because here we come into Cap, we come into Aquarius. Now, when we look at these right here, right, we think both of these are owned by Saturn, right? We think about the witching hours. We think about all these things. Nothing good happens after 12 o'clock, right? After midnight. Well, because these are the planets ruled by Saturn, right? Both of these planets, right? When you look at, I think about the duality of nature of society today when I think about this time period, right? And why these late hours are either considered amazing or bad, right? Because Saturn runs these signs and you look at the way the two signs are, right? We think about Capricorns trying to create structure, right? Almost like bullishly selfish sometimes with how they do it. They're very like stubborn, one-track minded, where your Aquarius is very open, right? So this would be like what you would consider like your government type systems here, and this is more like your grassroots revolutionaries, right? So that's why you have these two different energies at play at night, where depending on who that person is and their perspective, they channel it, right? Because most of your music comes from this time of night. A lot of musicians make music at this time. A lot of great inventors and thinkers come up with things around this time period right here. So why? How is it that they're doing that? Why is it that this time period is doing this? Hold on one second. Now, why is it that this time period is so popping, right? Why is it this time period is so important right here? Because this is when you're using Saturn's energy, using when they call it like father time, the restrictive energy, right? That's where music comes from, right? Doesn't music come from that, or art and expression, right? Because that's a lot of time, like, or even your science, right? Scientists just use science as their means and medium for expression, right? Like if I use physics, that's just like a certain language base that I'm using in order to express this truth that I've come to, right? But certain people have certain ways in which they like to formulate, right, their truth so that it can reach certain groups of people, right? But anyway, all these people are using this time period at some sense. Because if you think about all great inventions, inventors, things like that, had this thing where they had sleepless nights when they were creating their invention, right? They came to these wild and amazing things through this late time, because this time also has like a lot of creativity with it that comes with it. There's a lot of different things that, however, just like everything, we're not supposed to be overusing it, right? We're not supposed to be just up throughout this time, because now you're throwing off different things that we know as truth, right? Now, the last one is 4 to 6, right? And this is when we come into Pisces, right? Now, if you've ever been up at 4 to 6 a lot, you always know. If you do it, I will. If you ever been up at 4 to 6, you always know like your body is lucid, right? Like it's very aloofy in Pisces, right? And this is when you always have like your crazy dreams, right? Right before you wake up. Right before you wake up is always when you have like the most like vivid dreams, right? And you wake up in the dream, right? Pisces, very hard Pisces, right? If you wake up at this time, again, if you look at old ways that people used to fall, like, so let's talk about sleep schedules with this, because like now that we understand the daily phases, right? There's certain sleep schedules that were adopted throughout like time, right? In a sense, so that people were tapping into these types of things, right? So if you look at it this way, right? Especially like where I'm at now, like where we're at this point, 8 o'clock is technically when the sun goes down, right? So you like, Dr. Sebi hit you with you need to sleep from 10 to 2, right? Those are your best hours of sleep, right? So 2 puts me right before Aquarius, right? But it lets me sleep through Capricorn, so I don't express Capricorn energy, right? Because the way it looks is like, when you look at your Capricorn versus Aquarius, this is the energy that's going to want to fuck with Babylon hard, right? This is the energy that's going to want to like create something new. Sagittarius, that's a good energy too though. But Sag gets a little bit of a risk taker, right? They're risk taking, right? So there's a sleep schedule that people used to do, right? Where most people would sleep from 8 to 12, right? Because that's 4 hours. You sleep from 8 to 12, and then you're up from 12 to 4, and then you go back to sleep from 4 to 7. So you got 7-8 hours of sleep, right? And then you still tap into Aries and come back, but right? You're sleeping through your Sagittarius and Scorpio energy, right? So like, if we take all of this, right? This is a basic breakdown, right? Of how the signs are playing out in your day. Now you get to see where you express things. Because now this is where it's cool to add the charts. But we have to remember also, this is when I learned this one, it's here. These things all go in opposite order. Okay? So, when this energy is now playing out, right? So your daily phases and how they're coming in to play. Once you've learned it, you've really jumped in on what the sign's characteristics are, right? Now you can see certain times in your day, you'll be able to express maximum energy, as we'll say, into the certain things that you're doing. Once you understand how things are breaking down, so right. So we talk about like the 11th house, right? The 11th house has to do with like big network circles and groups, right? So if you look at 10 to 11, 8 to 10, where it's Taurus, which is the mouthpiece, right? And it's in the 11th house. Why do you think news is always at this time? The morning news between 8 and 10 p.m. is always like the pop and talk shows, right? Those are always the most like commercially accepted, right? Because it's Taurus is now in the 11th house and that's like the energy. The mouthpiece is now trying to project the message to the big group, right? Where you come into here, 10 to 12 now with Gemini, who's the relator. And this is, 10th house has to do with how you're being viewed. 10th house is like, I want appreciation and things like that. So Gemini is looking to relate to people and have people drawn to them and to view them, right? Again, works with the 10 to 12. 9th house has to do with higher culture, learning, things like that. Food, right? We're at home, right? Most people though, when you think about in your noontime space, when you take your break from work or something, you're always trying to like experience something, right? You might go back to watch something, you might go on your phone to be experienced something. You're trying to experience culture in some way. This time, bang, 8 o'clock. right? You jump into the 8th house, which is like uncovering, right? The 8th house is like the taboo, uncovering things, bringing things to light. Of course, Leo's gonna want to do that 2 to 4 after it's eaten its meal. It's trying to come out and show you something, right? Just like when you come back from lunch at work, you're trying to jump back into your work and get that daily stuff done, right? We talked about here where when you get to that from 8 to 12 at your quote unquote 9 to 5s, right? You're literally just like doing things from yesterday and trying to get the set and the parameters of the things you're doing for that day. This like 2 to 4 period, or like 1 to 4 in those type of environments is when you're actually doing your work for that day. And then 4 to 6 is when you're closing up, right? All makes sense there, right? But 7th house, right? We talk about Virgo coming in talking about the 7th, right? 7th has to do with the home, right? Family. So like obviously when you're closing up your day now in Virgo, you're analyzing what you're going back to. These types of things, right? So you see like how 8 to 10, again, that's in the 5th house. That's about creativity, right? Scorpio is now diving deep into creativity, but that's also sex, things like that. That's why 8 to 10, wow, right? Be careful here. But if we see the breakdown of all these signs and the houses, right, you can start to really project how certain energies play off. Like certain energies are a lot more physical, right? So like 2 to 4, that's an active energy, right? We have active energies coming 6 to 8. So a lot of people like working out at 6 to 8. A lot of people like working out after lunch, right? A lot of people like working out at like that late night space too, right? A lot of people like doing certain classes and stuff here. If you look at it, it really like breaking down this will start to show you why most people, like most of our rhythms, right, as far as what people are doing in their day-to-day basis, fall into all of this in a sense, right? So now once I take this and understand this basic, now I start to add my planets. Now once you add your planets in, you'll start to know why certain things happen at certain times for you, right? So like for me, for Aries, for me, my Aries for me is where my Mercury's at, right? So my Mercury's in Aries. Whoops, that's not Merc is this, right? My Mercury's in Aries and my sun is cusp right here, right? So for me, my mornings have always been so important for myself, right? Because when I wake up, every morning when I wake up, I always like to play some type of either like some type of documentary, some type of informational video, some type of meditative space, something that allows me, right, to get in touch with like what my conscious understanding is for the day. But I've always been in that because my Mercury is in Aries. So when it plays in, when my sun comes in at 8, I'm gonna want to activate my Mercury a lot more, right? Mercury is gonna be a lot more popping, right? So that's gonna be how I express too. Like I'm a very much a morning person. Once I wake up, being able to talk and do those things when I want to, be able to get on that, right? For me, most of my best like video work and stuff like that comes earlier in the day because that's when I'm most expressive. At nighttime is when I start to really like dial back, like way different vibe towards nighttime, right? So now I have my sun comes between the 8th and 10th. Now this is why I used to love breakfast so much, right? Because like when I'm maxing out hardest, right, sometimes, and the most like ideal time for my energy at like when it comes to my sun and how I'm going to project will come in this 8 to 10, this time right here, right? Because that's where my signs are set up. So in those times when the sun is hitting at those areas, right, and coming in with that light, I'm still going to get an extra boost technically in that light, right? Now we move here. So for me, Leo is where my Jupiter's at, right? So my Jupiter kind of like sits here most of the time during the day. But now when I look at it, right, most of the time I've learned a lot. Like most of the people that I learned from and I've learned things from and stuff like that, it's always come in this time period anyway. Because that's when like I'll find myself ready to take in certain information, ready to expand on certain things, right? Because this is an expansive time anyway because Leo's there, right? But now Jupiter comes in there and makes it bigger. So for me, if I'm trying to expand on things, this is the time period that I have to have free in order to put that action into that. Anything that I put in at this time period is going to be getting a little bit of Jupiter energy from me, from just how my planets are acting, right? So the more I can focus in things at this time, the more I can really grow in them, right? Now, like, we look here, this is where my Mars is. My Mars is in Cancer, and my moon. right? But this is why I like to be a chef. This is why I like to cook so much. Because like, look at where my Mars, so the time where I want to be the active the most, right? My most active time, right? We'll say my most active spirit is hanging out from 12 to 2 is when it's there. From 12 to 2 is when my highest bit of action wants to take place. 12 to 2. Boom. And that's where my moon is at also. So now when it comes in to empathetically, right? I'm most empathetic at noontime, right? This is how the phases of the day coordinate with my own phases. Because once we start to understand ourselves, we start to understand we have our own phases, right? Just like you have your own certain foods you can eat, right? There's certain people who can't eat certain foods that you eat. There's certain foods you eat that you can't eat that other people can eat, right? So everything has to be reminded that there's a big phase for the day, but then there's the personal phase of how this phase plays out for you, right? And what you're trying to do within it and how that breaks down. So certain people, like I have Venus here, right? Boom. Right, my Venus comes here. So now when it comes to that gem, because my Venus is in Gemini, so my Venus is going to come in that morning time. So if you can see right here, right, this is why you would call someone like a light worker. Because all my planets are lining up in the day phase of where things are coming, right? I don't have anything in Sag. Virgo is my ascendant. I got nothing in Libra, nothing in Scorpio. Oh no, I got Pluto, right? But that great transformation happens from 8 to 10, right? So my Pluto's gonna come there. Then the only other ones that I'd have here is I have Saturn coming in Saturn's time anyway, right? Right? When I stay up at these times, I'll end up having when I stay up these times, I'll end up having things play out for me as well. I'll be up at the so like for me to be able to take place and to understand my energies is to understand what I have going on at those times, right? What do I have going on at those times? You'll see. So if you are able to break down your chart and then you put your chart against something like this, right? And then you start to really think about some of the ways that you act in your day-to-day basis, you'll see that your phases of your day completely will correlate to some of these things. And then once you start to figure out where your planets are and you start plugging them in, you'll start to see there's certain ways that you express and you bring things up throughout this. That like once you start to look back, that's the best thing about text messaging, right? That's the best thing about the phones and technology is you can like really chart the rhythms of your day, right? If you start to really take some time and like think about things, like you'll be able to chart the rhythms of your day and see how you're expressing and like what times are the best for you to express certain things, what times are the best for you to fall in here. But like your phone and like things like that are a way to do it, and like the other level if you want to do the more matter based, like technologically based, right? You could easily do that with your phone. Watch this stuff, watch the articles you read at certain times, watch what times you go on certain apps, right? Because each app has a different function, right? So if I'm even trying to understand the way my mind works on a basis, think about what apps you go on certain times of the day. Think about those things. Once you do, you'll start to understand how you're relating to all of these things, right? But these are the daily phases. This is a solo astrology talk. Think about your day. Put your day together, right? Figure out what are the time periods of your day that you need to break down and how you break those down. Figure out what signs come in play at what times when you're doing your thing. But thank you guys for stopping by. Hope this information is applicable. For my astrology people, this will be very applicable. If you don't know astrology that well yet, jump into it and see what you can do with this. This is some dope shit. I just learned it. Shout out to Santos Bonacci for cracking this for me, because I really appreciate this one. It's amazing stuff. But anyway, till next time I see you guys, love and light to you.